for this episode of the Nostalgia Corner, I'm kind of mixed on what I want to cover. One could be, since it's Halloween of course, it could be based on the Ruby Gloom series that came out way back in I want to say 2008 maybe? Yes, I'll just go with that instead of looking it up on the internet. The other would be the Scary Godmother series, but who hasn't talked about that? And the third being the Dark Castle movies. You know, the company that made such great films like 13 Ghosts, Ghost Ship, and... oh, these weren't good at all, were they? Yeah, judging by that, let's go ahead and cover that early 2000s nightmare. Or at least, the nightmares it tried to be.
From here on, it gets really scary.
If you were lucky enough to exist during the late 90s, early 2000s, then you probably saw the Dark Castle Entertainment logo floating around. They were mostly attached to horror franchises such as House of Wax, 13 Ghosts, House on Haunted Hill, Ghost Ship, Gothika, etc. The name for Dark Castle Entertainment was based off of William Castle. He was a horror filmmaker from the 1950s and 1960s. This led to two remakes of Castle's best work, that being 1959's House on Haunted Hill and 1960's 13 Ghosts. After that, Dark Castle Entertainment moved on to more original material, which, as you can tell, wasn't that great. Surprisingly, they've been attached to a lot more movies than I thought. I just thought that they died off way earlier. Turns out their most recent movie was in 2017, called Suburbicon, with George Clooney as the director. Okay, you learn something new every day. But we're not going to talk about the most recent work, no. We're going to talk about three big ones. Or at least the main three that my memory can recall the most. And I'm sure yours will as well. Those three being 1999's House on Haunted Hill, 2001's 13 Ghosts, and 2002's Ghost Ship. Now I could talk about more than just that, but we'd be here all day. Besides, there's something about these three that stuck with me the most, and I'm pretty sure it stuck with others as well. They're like the Three Musketeers of cheesy early 2000s horror, with soundtracks ripped straight from your local Hot Topic, stars that were big at the time but suddenly faded out of fame, lack of lighting, and that beautiful, gorgeous early CGI. Also, they had that special way of editing their scenes. You know the ones. Excessive flashing lights, and everything is clipped together so fast you get nauseated real easily. I don't know why that was a thing, but for Dark Castle Entertainment, it was their thing. So let's start off with talking about House on Haunted Hill. Dark Castle Entertainment's first, and a remake of the original which came out in 1959 and starred Vincent Price. In this 1999 remake, Vincent Price's role is now portrayed by Geoffrey Rush, who plays Stephen Price, some super rich guy who owns a theme park designed to pretend to kill people for thrill. He has some bitchy wife, and they all plan a party up at the House on a Haunted Hill, which used to be an asylum full of crazy doctors, you know, that whole cliche that was really big back then. And they invite a bunch of guests up there, but none of them know each other. Hell, not even the hosts know who they are. Geoffrey Rush is like, I'm going to fuck with my wife and change the list just to be petty. Why am I married to her? The longer they stay in this House on a Haunted Hill, things get a little bit spooky. They get locked inside the old asylum, and they start getting picked out one by the angry spirits. The deaths are pretty gruesome. The first girl to get picked off, you don't even know what happens to her halfway through the film. At the very last minute, they find her, and it is, whew. Honestly, I'm not going to be able to show a clip because it shows a little bit too much, so I'll just say, she's, not all together anymore. I couldn't think of a good enough pun. I apologize, although I think you guys are happy I couldn't. Aside from the deaths, you also got some pretty good scares. Whenever I went to go revisit this movie not too long ago, I expected the worst automatically. I thought it wasn't gonna age very well because of the year it was made. It was made in a time where horror movies just weren't all that great. But I found myself actually liking it. Sure, it didn't age as well, but it did pretty good. What I mean by that is, of course, it has that classic late 90s horror cheese, and it's got all of the cliches used back in the day, but cliches and stereotypes are going to be in films for a very long time, so I guess I can give that a pass. But as far as scares and death and entertainment, it's pretty good. It's a very enjoyable film to this day.
What just happened to you there? That's nothing. You just been playing around with the ghosts. Wait till somebody lets out the darkness in this place. That's a whole new bunch of crazy shit. You'll hate that shit.
But funny enough, one of my favorite horror films of all time is 13 Ghosts. Not the classic 1960 one. No, 2001's 13 Ghosts with Shaggy Rogers.
What are you doing? What did I just say? Did I just say there's a petting zoo downstairs? No!
Now, some might say that this wasn't the best movie in Dark Castle Entertainment's name, but trust me, there's much worse they have shit out. Now, you might be wondering, why 13 Ghosts? You were practically praising House on Haunted Hill. Why isn't that one your favorite? To make the answer short and simple, it's fun. It's a really fun movie. Yes, I was shitting on it earlier for its choppy editing and the way that it looks, but all of that aside, I adore this movie. There's something about it that even as a kid I enjoyed, even though it scared the blue out of my jeans, and gave me countless nightmares of the Jackal. It's a movie that won its way into my heart and will stay there for years to come. Now, the movie is very different from the original film. It's a lot different, actually. Sure, it took a few elements to pay a nice little nod to the original, but the story overall is way different. But for once in a remake, it was a nice improvement. One cool element I would like to point out in the movie is the glasses. In the original 1960 film, there was a mechanic that was called spook vision or something like that, to where if the audience put on the glasses, they could see the ghost on the film. But without them, they don't see anything except for the actors freaking out. So in the 2001 remake, the characters can only see the ghost with the special glasses. Without them, they're in danger. It's honestly pretty cool.
I can't see shit without the glasses, idiot! Well, I can't see. And I think you should go this way.
Now, the plot itself is that the main character, Arthur, played by Tony Shalhoub, what a name that is fun to pronounce, he inherits a house from his uncle who just passed away at the beginning of the film. The creepy realtor, who is in no way at all a bad guy setting this up, mentions that his uncle was a collector of many things, which we find out was spirits. So Arthur, his kids, and his nanny all go to check the place out. They're very excited to have this house since they are in the hole and have been struggling for money ever since the death of his wife, who we find out very shortly is a spirit being kept in the basement of the house. Matthew Lillard plays the role of Dennis, a psychic and a friend to Arthur's uncle, who helped track down the ghost. He's there to try and warn Arthur and his family to get out of the house while they still can because he knows what's in the house. But of course, whenever some random guy comes up to you frantic about ghosts chilling in the basement of a house you don't have to worry about paying for ever a day in your life, of course your response is gonna be, yeah, sure pal, whatever. I'm Tony Shalhoub, who are you? Thus immediately leading into, oh shit, there are actually ghosts in the basement. My kids are disappearing one by one. I should've listened to Scooby-Doo over here. Through the movie, they run into some pretty gruesome and awesome looking ghosts. The most iconic being the Jackal, which Dennis points out as being the Charles Manson of ghosts. Which reminds me, each of these ghosts have a backstory. Pretty good backstories, actually. Sadly, they did not make it into the film. If you want to know about them, you have to look in the bonus features or the Wikipedia. The deaths in this one is pretty mediocre, but still, I highly recommend this one out of the 3. If this was a real review, I'd give it a 13 out of 10.
What is with you people? If it was next door, I wouldn't give a shit.
Oh boy, let's move on to Ghost Ship, shall we?
Should I say ghost shit?
I'm sorry. The biggest difference in this one is that it's not a remake. This was Dark Castle Entertainment's first attempt at making original content. And, it was okay. And I guess to give this film a little bit of credit before I tear into it, the opening scene of this movie is highlighted as the best intro in horror film history. Now, I wouldn't say the best in history, but it is up there in a list somewhere. It's just a little puzzling to figure out how sharp that wire really was to cut everybody in half like fucking deli cheese. Alright, the plot. Here we go. The opening sequence is set in 1962, while the main story is set in present day, which was 2002. We follow a boat salvage crew, and they discover the mysterious ship that we saw in the beginning, with baby-faced Emily Browning, but who am I kidding, she's always had a baby face. One of our main characters is named Epps, who I did not know that was her name until now. Epps. What is that? Is it short for something? Am I gonna get an answer to that? So blah blah blah, a bunch of boring shit happens in the beginning that nobody cares about. We just saw that shit in the intro. You think we're gonna give a shit about these two talking about going on the Titanic or whatever? We want to see some ghosts. We want to see the ghost ship. We want to see the sexy Spectre lady in the red dress. So we're gonna skip to the goods, alright, because that's where it's all at, baby. Epps often encounters Katie's ghost, which she doesn't let anybody else know about until way later, and it's not even to one of her best friends. It's to the guy that she just met that day. The guy that we should totally not worry about. Katie is shown as not being a harmful ghost. She's actually there to warn Epps about the dangers of the ship and the curse that lies within the walls. The longer that the crew stays on the ship trying to discover gold, the more paranormal stuff occurs. Such as that one scene where the two boys are sitting down there just grubbing down on grubs. Slimy, but not satisfying. Also, the pool starts filling itself up with blood and nobody bats an eye. The movie is pretty slow, and the scares, they're not that often. And when they do happen, you see them coming from a mile away. They're super predictable, and they just don't get you as hard as House on Haunted Hill did. You don't get that attached to the characters. Not that you did in the other movies, but still, these are pretty one-dimensional people. I do remember watching this movie often whenever I was younger, but now that I haven't seen it in a while, I can't think of anything too memorable about it. Sure, it's worth a watch, but out of the three, it's the weakest. Like I said, Dark Castle Entertainment has made much, much worse. Wrapping this up, do you remember anything from Dark Castle Entertainment? If so, let me know in the comments. This has been Space Robot's Nostalgia Corner. Thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.
Don't you look away. Just try to stay as long as you can. Yeah, just hold my hand and we'll make